Hey, what's up everybody? Hammer Heart Metal Reviews here once again. Today we're doing another discography countdown for you, and we are going to be talking about Ihsahn today. So if you're unfamiliar with his works, this is of course the longtime frontman from Emperor. After they disbanded, he went solo. Emperor is still technically together, just touring. I don't think they're ever going to put out any new music. But over the course of Emperor's career, obviously one of the biggest names in like symphonic black metal. And then as their career progressed in their last couple albums, it really started going in a more progressive direction with the songwriting. And that seems to be the direction that Ihsahn really wanted to embrace. And that's why he went solo, to even take it even further, really experimenting with the sound, very avant-garde ideas. It kind of describes his music as like extreme progressive metal. Me, myself, personally, admittedly, I'm not a huge prog guy. For me, it really depends on the band. There's certain prog bands that I do enjoy, but I've just been a fan of Ihsahn ever since the Emperor days, and his really unique take on songwriting. Like, it's still got the mix of like the black metal harsh vocals, but with a ton of clean vocals as well. And there's so many influences and styles that he incorporates into this material, and he just melds it all together. It's such a unique way. Sometimes it's maybe a bit challenging with the songwriting here, but yeah, really interesting stuff. He's got 7 full lengths as well as 2 EPs. I usually don't include EPs in discography rankings, but I'm going to include them today because they're both worth mentioning. And this is a really hard discography to rank because really day to day, it really depends on what mood you're in as to which album you may prefer. Like from album to album, the atmospheres and moods and emotions really kind of shift. And he really excels at conveying like these different emotions and atmospheres throughout his music. So yeah, it really keeps you on your toes, and really which albums you're going to prefer probably just depends on the day. But I'm going to give you my ranking for today from my least favorite down to my favorite. So here we go. So my least favorite Ihsahn album, I'm going to go to 2013 with Das Seelenbrechen. Probably mispronouncing that. This one is a very challenging album. It almost has like an improvised feel in certain parts. It really pushes the boundaries on what he can do here in like going so many different directions. But for me personally, I found this album a little bit too much out there for my personal tastes. There's still some decent moments, but I just like some other albums more. This one's kind of got too many ebbs and flows and too many curveballs to keep me engaged the whole time. There's some parts of it that I just can't really get into, but I don't want it to sound too negative. It's a very experimental and interesting album. If I had to pick favorite songs, Hilbur and Knuckle. But all in all, yeah, it was kind of an easy choice for which one I go back to the least anyway, but don't disregard it. Still go check it out if you're into this style of music, because it's very interesting. But it's in 9th place for me today. Up next in 8th, I'm going to the album that was right before that, actually, from 2012, Eremita. So this one kind of is the logical progression after the first 3 albums. This one really is progressive extreme metal. That's the best description, but really it's infused with a ton of jazz influence as well. There's a bunch of saxophone going on here, and there's even some songs that remind me of like later day Enslaved with their progressive take on black metal. I don't know if Ihsahn was influenced by that or what, but there's some similarities there in the sound in certain sections anyway. But yeah, this is full of like catchy and hooky choruses that really work. It's almost got like, there's like pop influence as well with the way some of these choruses are put together. But yeah, maybe this one, I have it in 8th just because I don't necessarily connect with all the songs in the same way as I do on some other albums. But overall, like, this still has a ton of great moments. As I'm going out like throughout this list, it really just depends on the day. Like I said earlier, this is not a bad album by any means, but I just personally prefer some other ones. Best songs on here, Arrival, The Eagle and the Snake is pretty cool. So all in all, definitely still worth a listen in 8th place. All right, up next in 7th, I'm going to go with one of the EPs I was talking about. He released 2 EPs in 2020. I'm going to go with the second one here, Pharos. So this one is a totally different beast than anything he had really done before. This is like all clean singing. And this is very melancholic, melodic, moody, progressive, almost like doom rock. There's not really any black metal to be found in the sound here at all. It's very poppy in moments, but catchy. And it's really got, like, this album is all about the atmosphere. It's really subdued and sad and melancholic, but it works really well. It's got like a happy tone, but meanwhile still rooted in these sad atmospheres, if that makes any sense at all. I can't even convey it in words. You have to go listen to it. But with these two EPs, it was like 3 new tracks and then 2 cover songs. I do really like the new tracks here. Losing Altitude is probably my favorite on the album. But yeah, this is different than most of his other material, but I still really dig it. It's a change in direction, but I really like this style, and if he pursues this further, I'm definitely going to be listening. Up next, in 6th place, I'm going to go with his 3rd album from 2010, After. So this one, compared to the first 2 albums, which I have not yet talked about, is a lot more progressive than the first 2. This is kind of the first album that really added in saxophone in spades. Maybe it could even be, you could say that it's maybe overused on this album, maybe in a few spots. It seems a little out of place. It works in some sections, but then sometimes it's just thrown in maybe a little bit too much. This album, to me, really sounds like a mix of the progressive era of Emperor with some shades of a band like Opeth, and then throw in some dark jazz, and this is kind of the result. There's not as much black metal elements on this album as on the first 2, but that's okay. It's going in a new direction. He's always shifting and changing the style from album to album. And this album even has a few like longer epic tracks, and overall, this is a pretty solid album. I enjoy it. From here on out, I really dig all this stuff. Favorite tracks on here, that Barren Lands, the title track After is probably my favorite on the album. Undercurrent is solid as well. So yeah, that one's in 6th place. Now we're into the top 5. In 5th place, I'm going to go with the other EP that came out in 2020, Telemark. So this is probably the most black metal that Ihsahn has ever sounded in his solo material. Like I said earlier, this was the first of 2 EPs, both released in 2020. Similarly to Pharos, this one has 3 originals and then 2 cover songs. And yeah, I really dig the black metal approach that he did here. Kind of had a throwback sound while still retaining the progressive edge. But you had songs like Stridig and Nord, and then there's an amazing cover of Wrathchild by Iron Maiden here that just, it suits it so well. I had never really thought of that song in a black metal perspective, but Ihsahn's touch on it, it kicks so much ass. I love it. Awesome EP, even though it's short. I'm still ranking it high in 5th place. All right, up next at number 4, I'm going to go to 2016 with the album Arctis. So this one, yeah, really great return to form. This was the release right after Das Seelenbricken, which I didn't like as much, but then this one I really enjoy. It's got this really grim Arctic atmosphere throughout the whole album, and there's so much variation here. Mix of clean vocals with harsh vocals. It's progressive, but not as out there as the album that was right before it. Maybe still has some odd moments, but it mostly works. This is a really solid, engaging album from start to finish, and I really dig it. Like I said, an excellent return to form. Not that the previous album was terrible. I prefer this one a lot more than the one that came before it. Favorite tracks on here, Disassembled is awesome. Mass Darkness, In the Vaults. All in all, one of his best for sure. That's why I've got it in 4th place. Up next, in 3rd, I'm going with the album that came out right after that. His most recent full length, which is from 2018, Amr. Or Amr. I'm not actually sure on the pronunciation. But yeah, here, this late in his career, he's still experimenting and progressing with his sound. There's a huge infusion of these like 80s style synths on this album, which then kind of got used again on the EP Pharos. Like, that's obviously a huge influence for him. Got so many different things that have inspired him, and just thinking of him in terms of black metal, that might not be what you're thinking of as with these style of synths, but it really works. Like, listen to the opening track, Lend Me the Eyes of the Millennia, with that opening synth, and then the guitar and the harsh vocals come in. It's just fucking amazing. Probably my favorite track on the album. There's, yeah, so much variation from song to song, and even within the same songs, it changes styles. Like I said, just so many influences going on here between black metal, even some poppy moments, prog, obviously, jazz, just a mishmash of all of these things thrown together. Once again, really utilizes these catchy poppy choruses in parts, and it really works so well with his clean vocals. I already mentioned Lend Me the Eyes of the Millennia, but then also Arcana Empyri is a great song, and Wake is another standout. All in all, great album, in third place. That just leaves two more. His first two full lengths are actually what I'm going to rank in first and second, but what order am I going to put them in? Drum roll, let's see. In second place, I'm going with the debut from 2006, The Adversary. So yeah, when this came out, definitely threw me for a bit of a curveball if I was kind of expecting a follow-up to Emperor. This still has shades of late-era Emperor with the progressive direction it was going, but this is vastly different. There's so many influences. Still got the shades of black metal, but yeah, jazz, avant-garde, progressive, symphonic, classical music, everything is kind of thrown in there, and it works. It's really challenging song structures, but yeah, there's great cleans. The vocals are like one of the highlights here. I absolutely love both his harsh and clean vocals. And yeah, just really excellent debut. I enjoy this album a lot. Favorite tracks on here: Invocation is solid, Citizen, Homecoming features guest vocals from Garm. All in all, excellent debut in second place. So that just leaves one, going with his sophomore album as my favorite album by him, and that is from 2008, Angle. So this one was the logical successor to the debut, kind of follows in that same style, incorporating all these different influences, but this one dials up the progressiveness a little bit from the debut, and the guitar playing really shines here, and the songwriting is really top-notch. How he even comes up with these songs, I don't know, and there's just tons of standout tracks on here. Like, on some of the other albums, there might be some standout tracks, but this whole album seems to be full of them. It's got a really unique approach, and that's what really makes this one stand out, and even makes his material stand out in an overall metal spectrum. Like, it's so unique. You hear this and you just know it's Ihsahn. There's no one else that sounds like this. Favorite tracks on here: Misanthrope. Unhealer is probably my favorite track. Features Michaela Ackerfeld from Opeth, and the trade-off between his and Ihsahn's vocals, absolutely amazing. Like, if you've never listened to Ihsahn's solo material, go check out Unhealer. That is a top-notch song. Awesome stuff. Malediction is another great song. All in all, this was actually kind of an easy choice for my favorite. This is the one I go back to the most. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. So anyways, these are just my thoughts and opinions as usual. Love to hear yours down below. I know this is a really hard discography to rank, so I'd love to see some of your rankings. Let me know which ones are your favorite, your least favorite. And anyways, until next time, Hammerheart Metal Reviews, out.